Hello, this is Debu Tripathy from Cure Magazine. I am following up on some of the stories of breast cancer that apply to patients with metastatic breast cancer. It's a challenge to find a drug that really goes over and above what chemotherapy does, and as many of you know, these drugs have their limitations. Not only do they have side effects, but at some point they stop working as clinical resistance develops. There are several targeted drugs, biological drugs, that are being tested in this area. And we're getting a report from some early studies. It's a little too early for these to be approved, but I thought I'd give you a sneak preview as to what we might see in the years to come. Antiangiogenic drugs have been of great interest because they block blood vessel formation and may inhibit tumor growth. However, the ones that have been tested so far, such as Avastin, have been disappointing because even though they may prolong remission times, they don't seem to improve the cure rate or improve the number of the number of months or years that people may live. A new drug known as AMG 386 or trametinib has been tested in combination with Taxol, and at early glance seems to be a very active combination. 85% or a little greater than 85% of patients actually responded with tumor shrinkage, which is a very high number. But this is really an incomplete observation. We need to see how long these remissions last and how they compare to other drugs. However, this is an important first hurdle that a drug must pass, so we're optimistic that as we get more information about this drug that it may do well. Another class of drugs that is being looked at in hormone receptor positive cancer is a class of drugs called CDK4/6 inhibitors. CDK stands for cyclin-dependent kinase. These are proteins that get the cell into the division cycle. So by blocking this core function of cells, of activity in cells, we may actually have a drug that can bypass some of the other resistance pathways. So in hormone receptor positive cancers, these drugs have already shown pretty big improvements in disease-free outcome and may be on the verge of approval. There's a much larger study with a CDK4/6 inhibitor called palbociclib that is probably going to report its results soon and may lead to FDA approval. It turns out that this drug is also being tested in triple-negative breast cancers in combination with chemotherapy, and other types of cyclin-4/6 inhibitors are being tested also as a single agent without hormonal therapy in patients who are no longer responding to hormonal therapy. There does seem to be activity with these drugs in different settings, so we hope to get more information from these, and we may find that they have expanded uses. Another area is the treatment of patients with metastatic BRCA1 and 2 related cancers. These are cancers that are seen in patients that carry the inherited mutations and may respond specifically to certain types of drugs that are involved in DNA repair, because after all, that is what the BRCA1 and 2 defect is, in the cell's ability to repair its DNA. Certain drugs known as PARP inhibitors, poly-ADP ribose polymerase inhibitors, have shown early promise in having activity against BRCA1 and 2 related cancers, and one of these drugs known as veliparib is now reporting results from a small study looking at patients that are getting this as a single agent, and it does seem to be active. About a third of patients are responding. It's a little too early to know how long the responses are, but we look forward to more information about this drug alone or in combination with other chemotherapy agents. And then the last drug I'll talk to you about is a drug called Neurontin. It's a drug similar to lapatinib, also known as Tiker, which inhibits HER2, and it's being tested in patients whose tumors are no longer responding to the other HER2-targeted therapies such as Herceptin, Perjeta, and TDM1. And certainly activity is being seen not only in patients with metastases, but specifically in patients with brain metastases. So again, early results. There are randomized trials going on that may lead to approval of this drug, and those trials should be reporting their results in the next year or two. So while we don't have major news to report in the metastatic setting, there is some progress, and we hope that these drugs that I mentioned will move through the clinical trial process and soon be available to patients.